Okay. Welcome, everybody. The meeting's being recorded. Thank you, Sean. I think you're all set to go, so have a great night. And we have with us one of our town attorneys, Lauren Goldberg, who's going to give us a presentation. And after that, we will do minutes, and then we will do public comment and continue with our agenda. We also may, in the unanticipated section, just review the public comment that was sent to us. Athena was gracious enough to send us quite a bit of public comment. Both her and Erica cannot be here tonight due to different personal issues. And I will go through the roll call. Bernie.
Present.
Meg.
Present.
Andy.
Here.
Marcus.
Here.
Raphael.
Here.
Ken.
Present.
Excellent. So we definitely have a quorum. We're just missing Erica. And I will let you go ahead, Lauren, if you want to give your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. And if you guys are comfortable, it's okay for me, Julian, to replace your share, right?
Yes, please go right ahead. Yep, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to answer your questions as we go. There are certainly, you may ask something before I get to it, but I'm happy to, to answer your questions. So if you want to interrupt me, I'm comfortable with that. If you are, Julian.
Yeah, that's fine. Just raise your hand before you talk for committee members so that I can see and get you in the queue and it's not just hodgepodge.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. So this is my joke slide. It's not a joke, but it's a disclaimer. I'm a lawyer, so there you have it. Okay, I thought what we would do is start to talk about some practical issues, just look at the provision of the charter that relates to the periodic review, and then move to kind of what charters do and how we adopt them. As I know you all had questions about the different methods to do that, and so I'll go through that hopefully in as clear a way as possible because it's as clear as mud. So, all right, so we're going to start with, as I told you guys before, right when we open, I'm the managing attorney here at KP Law, and I've been working with the town of Amherst for a number of years. I'm afraid to say how many. I used to have all brown hair when I started. That's how long it's been. So I worked with the town government when it was a board of selectmen, and have kind of watched all the changes to town government. I also, in my role at the firm, work with any number of other cities and towns. We represent about 135 cities and towns as city solicitor and town council. And so, as you can imagine, there are changes to forms of government all the time. And in the spring, especially busy because, as you know, towns have their town elections and town meetings in the spring. So, I look at a lot of these things. In my experience, usually a periodic charter reviews will do a number of important things. One is, after you adopt a charter, especially, there's ambiguous language, the gender, numbering, and grammatical issues are addressed. Internal consistency is looked at, consistency with state laws like the public procurement laws, the minimums change, and so charter changes happen with respect to that. And this is the most, I'd say, substantive part of what I see is correcting provisions in the charter, either to make them function more effectively, meaning they weren't written the way that we needed to be able to carry them out, or the opposite, to make them more consistent with how we're actually doing things. And it is highly usual, not unusual, but usual, for changes to be made of that nature, especially the first charter review after adoption of a new charter. So, those are the types of things that you can that I'm sure you are considering. And I've read some of your minutes and a few other things. So I know you're already doing a lot of work. I wanted to just remind you, as the town attorney, I feel like it's my job, it's a joke too, that appointed charter review committees like yours are subject to the open meeting law, the conflict of interest law, and the public records law. And importantly, so are subcommittees in terms of the open meeting law. So anytime two members are authorized to act together, even if it's less, which it is less than a quorum, that would still be considered subcommittee for purposes of the law. So it's much more effective to just assign one person a task if you want them to be able to work on these things, on a regular basis. Under the open meeting law, you have to post 48 hours ahead and have, as you know, an agenda. Okay, so you are all very familiar with this. Section 9-6 of the town charter provides for a charter review and every year ending in a 4. And it, addresses the appointment and the number and a little bit of a timeline. This was the charge that the council voted to review the charter and in accordance with all applicable laws that define features of the charter that may be changed consistent with the present form of government defined by the charter adopted in September 25, 2017. So the charge contemplates that the group is going to look at the charter with the current form of government, i.e. town council, town manager, as it's in place right now. The charter review committee's composition, the 9 members, and the reports that are required, as well as the focus in the charge on voter and resident input, very much parallels what's required of an elected charter commission. So this process, you have these 3 reports that you have to prepare, getting more and more detailed as they go forward. And you will make these reports to the town council, and then the town council can choose what it wishes to adopt and push forward. And then either we need a special act or a vote of the registered voters at an election. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So why do we even have charters? Charters are essentially the constitution of the town. And there's language in Chapter 43B, Section 20, for anyone who's interested, that renders any differences with respect to the form of government consistent with state law. So, for example, if there's, a statute that says there shall be a 3-member board of health, and for whatever reason, you all want a 9-member board of health, you can do that with a charter, and it's deemed consistent with state law. So it is, in many ways, a charter kind of supersedes state law when it specifically addresses something. When it doesn't, we have to look to state law. But when it does, it will supersede state law in that regard. And again, Chapter 43B, Section 20, and it has a whole list. It can take authority away from one official and give it to another. It can provide for a confirmation. It can, a confirmation of an appointment. It can consolidate positions. So all of those things are deemed consistent with state law.
I had one question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
This is actually really helpful. I've heard from some members of this committee, and actually thought myself, that it worked the opposite way, as in state law superseded the charter. But it's really interesting to hear that the charter can supersede state law. So, like, let me just give you an example. I could be incorrect in this, but when we're talking about some of our discussions around executive authority and budgeting and that sort of stuff, if someone were to say, actually, state law prohibits, it is our job to say, am I correct in assuming it is our job to say, well, yes, state law has that, but this is the workaround. This is how we can go around it, as opposed to sort of stopping in our tracks and saying we can't touch that because of state law. Is that correct?
So I get one, it depends, because that's what lawyers do. So I'm gonna use that now. I'll try not to do it again, but forgive me if I do. So state law, let's just say relative to minimum bidding requirements, that's gonna govern. It's going to supersede. If you had something old in your charter that was inconsistent with that, then that would supersede. a conservation commission, conservation regulations. I don't know why you'd have that in your charter, but if in theory, if you did. But what supersedes is, and I have this section 20, so if you guys don't mind, I'll just read to you quickly. It says the provisions of any charter or charter amendment adopted pursuant to this chapter shall be deemed consistent with the provisions of law relating to the structure of city and town government, the creation of local offices, the term of office or mode of selection of local offices, and the distribution of powers, duties, and responsibilities among them. And then it says any particular office can be elected or appointed, except for a few. Any local officer or employee can be appointed by any other. The number of people to serve on a multiple member body, except they're always going to have an odd number. The term of office, not longer than 5 years. Merger or consolidation of 2 or more offices, and that the powers, duties, and responsibilities of one office can be divided and exercised by 2 or more, or confirmation of an appointment by someone else. So in that regard, the charter will supersede. There are things in state law that relate to other things. Let's just take elections stuff for a minute. And so there are provisions, there are some limitations if you use the Chapter 43B statutory process for amending the charter. You can't make any changes relative to elections. So there's some things like that that will not supersede, but there are many cases where if it relates to the organization of government, that it will supersede.
Thank you. That's helpful. Andy, I'll let you have a question.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out. My understanding was that we couldn't do anything about that we would require a charter commission, I guess, a new charter commission if we wanted to, say, have a mayor instead of a manager, or if we wanted to have different terms or different numbers of people on the council.
Yep.
Things like that. Is that true?
Well, so Andy, what you have raised, and it's a really good question, is the question of what an appointed charter committee can do as compared to an elected charter commission. And I think the important thing is to start with is that a charter review committee appointed under a periodic charter review provision is responding to and subject to direction from the appointing authority, from the council, right? So the council has said, please come back to us with a review of the charter in accordance with laws that define what features may be changed consistent with the present form of government. Can a charter review committee recommend a fundamental change in the nature of government? And that's what you're talking about, Andy. They're called major amendments. In theory, yes, but typically a periodic charter review does not do that kind of work. Typically, a periodic charter review would look at the things that we just talked about, whereas a charter commission, an elected charter commission, or a town government study committee, a committee formed to look at that type of change in the form of government would be doing that work.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
So yeah, I think that's what we're, as a committee, I think we're committed to casting a wide net and hearing what people think about how the form of government is working. And some people might say, we have too many people on the council or whatever. Or some people might say we need a mayor. And so I think what we're trying to figure out is we may have a report that says, here's the things we think are within our scope and things that the council can do on its own. And then there's other ways that the charter could be changed, which would be, in many cases, require a new charter commission. So I think we're just trying to get a sense of, what kinds of things can be done easily and are more typical of, the tweaking, as opposed to what are the things that would require, state intervention or a new charter commission. So I assume you'll be getting to that, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, thank you. And I will give you, I will talk about that a little more. I think if we go back and just, let me see if I can do that. I'm somewhat challenged.
Could I ask intervene with a process question as a note taker? Will these
sure.
slides be available to attach to the minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So I'm only going to record comments.
If I'd been more organized, I would have sent it over ahead of
No,
time.
no, no, I
to
don't need
look
it
at.
ahead. I'm the note taker, so I'm asking a secretarial question. Thank you,
Understood.
Lauren.
Okay, so when
Amen.
I look at this, Andy, and again, this is my perspective, you know, the town council could have given a different charge and asked for you to review, for example, whether there should be 9 counselors instead of 13, or whether there should be a mayor. That, they could have done that. But when you look at this provision, it provides 1 year for any changes to be proposed. And the elected charter commission process is a 2-year process. And so, you know, I think, and I've worked with many an appointed charter review committee. In fact, in Westwood, we just finished up a 3-year process that wasn't looking at changing the form of government. So it is quite an undertaking to actually, you know, source from the public their input, organize your own thoughts, agree on a proposed change, and then write it up, and to do all that within such a short period of time. So in my view, the charter review language, along with the language from the charge, really suggests that you're not looking, that the council wasn't looking for a complete change of government recommendation. But I will say, and I mean this in all sincerity, that if there are questions about the scope of the charge, then, you know, that's something you all could go back to the council and ask about.
So there's some, this is making it some lack of clarity about whether the year is when we give a report or the final report, because they appointed us in June, but we didn't begin meeting until late September.
That's a question I can answer, Meg, because they just passed our extension request.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So that is settled. We are good to October 31st.
We could ask me for later if we
take
needed
longer
to.
than that. We may want to ask for another extension request when I look at sort of scheduling out our meetings into the future when we actually get to reviewing articles. We may need that other extension request, but until now we're scheduled to October 31st, and that was approved by the council Monday night. Lauren, I'll let you get on with your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Okay, so there's 3 types of charters. There's home rule charters. Those are charters that are passed under the Home Rule Amendment, and essentially Home Rule Procedures Act charters under Chapter 43B. Those are statutory charter revisions and adoptions. The next kind are special act charters, and those are charters that have been requested by a city or town and approved by the general court, and often also by the voters. There are also plan charters, and you might have heard people talk about these before: Plan A, Plan B. They go all the way up. I think it's Plan E, although it might even go past that. And then there's a standard or statutory form of representative town meeting. Those are the basic forms of governance documents. The plan charters are no longer available to towns to adopt, or to cities. And so now we really deal with just home rule charters and special act charters. There's, I believe, 2 towns that adopted the statutory form of representative town meeting, but that too now towns are encouraged to go the home rule process or the special act process.
And we currently are under the home rule process, for folks who don't know, in Amherst. And
Right, you guys
were under the standard method for town meeting when we were town meeting.
Right, you had an open town meeting, Julian, and you had you had an elected charter commission that proposed a charter that went to the voters. Okay, so when there isn't a charter, and I just want to kind of give people this background so they understand, only towns can operate without a charter, and they follow the rules that are in the general laws. And the general laws essentially provide various options with respect to form of government. The towns adopt bylaws, which are like ordinances in cities, or for you guys, like your town bylaws as well. And for towns with no charter, they can't make any changes about the size, composition, or mode of election or appointment of the legislative body, board of selectmen, or town manager. Bylaws also have to be consistent with state law. So the governance chapters really are chapter 40 and 41. There's stuff about borrowing and elections and all sorts of different chapters, but most of the stuff is in there. And the law does have built-in flexibility, and I just give some examples there of, you know, you can vote on to add or take away numbers of collectors. You can change an office that's elected under Chapter 41, Section 1 to appointed. Chapter 43C has a petition process that allows for a consolidated department. So there are options under state law as well. And so why have a charter? Charters essentially can change state law with respect to, and this is kind of what we were talking about, the size of a select board. They can create a representative town meeting. They can create a town or city council or change the size of a town or city council. They can create positions and define powers of various town officials and appointees. They can transfer power from, let's say, the select board or other statutory board or office to another entity, such as a town manager or administrative staff. They've allowed staff positions to be professionalized, and they coordinate operations of various departments, often by having those departments fall under some general supervision like that of a town manager. Okay, we're not gonna take a long time on this because these things are here and you can read them later. All right. In 1966, the state adopted the Home Rule Amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution. And that was a huge change in what municipalities could do. Prior to that, they couldn't make any changes without going to the state legislature. And afterward, under Chapter 43B, towns can elect a charter commission to adopt or make significant revisions to a charter, or they can make smaller scale amendments to an existing charter without the legislature's involvement. So under the Home Rule Amendment, even if your charter doesn't say that you can use a special act, you can use a special act to amend it. You also can go to the general court and ask for approval of a home rule petition. And that's kind of that second thing there. When you're using a home rule petition, there we go. It's also called asking for a special act. There's two ways to do that. We're not going to linger here. Really, the first one is the one that applies in this case. It would be a request on petition filed or approved by the voters of a town or the town meeting of a town with respect to a law relating to that town, or with the town council. And then there's also a way to ask for a governor's bill, but that is more typically done in a town because it doesn't require approval of the legislative body, and that wouldn't be used here. Okay, so what I've done is I've tried to talk about, the two options that exist. Option number one, when we talk about option one, is a special act, a home rule petition. And option two is going to be the statutory procedure, Chapter 43B. So if we're talking about option one, the home rule petition, adoption of a charter, a home rule petition for a charter amendment requires only a majority vote. It is not required to have a 2/3 vote. So whatever the council's normal rules are for approving items, those would apply. A proposed home rule petition can appear on the agenda for the town council in the same way as any other matter. So, a councilor could ask, it could be on the president's own initiative, but there's nothing special about how a home rule petition lines up on the agenda. Sorry. Okay, so something that's very important to understand is that when you're using option one, a special act, there is no requirement under state law for voter acceptance, which means it does not need to go to the voters for approval. However, because a special act home rule petition goes to the legislature, it requires not only the council's vote, but also approval by the general court. So there are no changes that the council can make to the charter on its own. It always needs either approval by the voters or approval by the general court and or approval by the voters in that as well. Many special acts do take effect upon approval by the general court, and whether to include one in, to include a voter acceptance provision in a special act is up to the town council. In this case, it's a policy decision. However, if a town seeks to make a major change, and that's back to what Andy was talking about before, a change to the manner of the composition, manner of election, terms of the legislative body or the town manager or the select board, when that kind of a change is made under a special act, often the general court wants to add a voter approval provision, a voter acceptance provision. And that makes sense. It's a big deal. And so the general court, it's much easier for the general court to push something forward when they know it's going to go to the voters, rather than the legislature being the decider on whether it should take effect or not. So minor changes, grammar, there's been a ton of special acts to change the name of Board of Selectmen to Select Board, or to change gendered language in charters, so changing from chairman to chair. There's been a ton of that, and those typically do not go back to the voters for approval. However, a recall special act or a recall, act being added to a charter would likely go to voter approval, depending on how controversial it is. Okay, so that's special act. Does anyone have questions on that? I can pause here if that's the case.
Andy, go ahead. You're muted.
I'm trying to just sort out, are we talking about a charter commission here, or are we talking about whatever we might propose as a charter review committee?
Right, yeah, I have the same question.
Okay, I think for purposes of this discussion, it's better to not think of you guys at all right now. There's two ways to change a charter. Option one is to use a special act, okay? A special act has no content limitations, and it does not require approval from the voters. So that's one way to make changes. And in that regard, there are no content limits. It can make whatever changes are in the special act. You guys are making a recommendation to the town council about amendments that you would like to see. And so your recommendation could be pursued as a special act, or the council could choose to manage it or deal with it under Chapter 43B. So that decision ultimately will be, made by the council. In theory, a special act could include any type of change, as I just said, a major change or a minor change, no content limitations. The other way of changing the charter is under Chapter 43B, which they didn't name very well for us to distinguish them. It's the Home Rule Procedures Act, and some people call it the statutory method. And that was the chapter of the general laws that was adopted by the legislature to implement the Home Rule Amendment. And so it requires all sorts of procedures, and we'll talk about those, and can take 2 years to accomplish if a charter commission is elected. Now, because nothing is easy, when you use the statutory method, there are content limitations. And those limitations are, as they're set forth up there, they have to, the charter has to be consistent with state law, even though those changes that we talked about at the beginning that will be deemed consistent, those are fine, but they can't do any of these things, and they can't do something that's inconsistent with state law. In this method, option 2, the statutory method, there are 2 pathways. And this, Andy, is, I think, where what you were talking about earlier. The 2 pathways depend on the content of the amendment. Pathway A, charter adoption or a major charter revision, can only be done by an elected charter commission. And there shouldn't be bullets in each of those. I'll change that before I send it back to you. They have to hold at least 1 public hearing, prepare a preliminary and final report, do a mailing to all registered voters, and the ballot question goes on the ballot at the next regular election occurring at least 90 days after submission to the Attorney General. That is for those major changes, because an elected charter commission has the ability to propose major changes and have those changes go directly to the voters. And that's an important distinction, because the special acts that we were just talking about, or these minor revisions, go through the town council. That is why, and if you think about why you had an elected charter commission last time around, it's because it's supposed to be a grassroots effort. It's a petition that has to be signed by 15% of the registered voters. It's not something that the council can just do on its own. It can't say, we would like to have an elected charter commission. The only way to do it under state law, as it exists right now, is to have it be the grassroots petition process. The Pathway B is a minor revision, and so it can do anything related to town government other than changes to the form of the legislative body, town manager, board of selectmen, term of office, and number of members. When the council approves a Pathway B charter amendment, it requires a 2/3 vote of the legislative body, and it is required to go to the voters at an election. So to make it easy for you, I made this slide. This is the slide that says what are major amendments. And this is it. Composition, mode of election or appointment, or terms of office of an open or representative town meeting, city or town council, mayor, city or town manager, and a select board. Other things that are important may not, are not major amendments. So a lot of times, like one town was considering making its planning board appointed, and they kept saying, do we have to do that with an elected charter commission? And we explained, no, it's not considered a major amendment. So you could do it as a Pathway B on the statutory method, or you could make the change through a special act. To change the size of the council, that's a major amendment. Has to be, if we're going on option 2, if we're using the statutory method, that has to be done by an elected charter commission. It can only be done by an elected charter commission. So this is, the 15% of registered voters.
One sec.
Yes.
Andy, you have a question? I also have a question, but go ahead.
Yeah, this is where I'm curious then about this. That's how I understood under the home rule process that you can that the major amendments can't be made without a charter commission, but under the statutory act, model, can a statutory act process end up with, say, changing the size of the council?
Okay, I think you have it reversed. So a special act, which is a home rule, the home rule
Special act.
petition for a special act, any changes can be made using a special act. So Andy, that could be, I'm just, let's be hypothetical for a minute. It could be this group, it could be a different group that's appointed to study change of government. A recommendation is made to the town council. The only choice that they would have would be to do a special act, because they couldn't do this major amendment pathway. It wouldn't exist for them, because only an elected charter commission can use this pathway.
So,
Andy, you have any follow-up?
Sorry.
yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
could the charter review committee say, we recommend that you shrink the size of the council, and the council chooses to follow the special act process and votes and says, yeah, we want to do that, and then that goes to the legislature, or
Yep.
do they have to go through the home rule process?
They
Well,
don't,
if
just special act, I think.
if let's say there's a recommendation, or let's say there's not, let's say the council decides, we'd like to have 15 members, or we'd like to have 19 members.
Yeah.
And they could pass a vote seeking special legislation, a special act to make that happen. Now, I can tell you, using to the best of my ability, my sense of prediction here is that they would say that also has to have what we talked about before, a voter acceptance provision, because that's serious. You would need an elected charter commission to make a change like that. So that's why that's why it would likely require that voter acceptance as well. But that is under the special act process. And that's completely different than using this statutory process. And
That
the statutory process
makes sense.
essentially limits what kinds of changes can be made without an elected charter commission. As I said, typically for when there is a groundswell of support for a change in form of government, like there was previously in Amherst, that's when you see that grassroots petition process come forward, and you elect the charter commission. They aren't appointed. They're not answerable to the council. The council doesn't tell them what their charge is. They meet, they make recommendations, and those recommendations go directly to the voters. They bypass the council entirely. So the power of an elected charter commission is its independence. And it's also, again, someone has to want that really badly to go and get 15% of the voters of the town to sign a petition for that purpose.
I think I understand this. Do you mind if I'll just give you an example and tell me if I'm understanding this correctly? Is that okay?
Sure.
So say theoretically, we as a committee were to recommend that we wanted to move to a mayor, or we wanted to bring back our representative town meeting. We could make that as a recommendation theoretically, and then that recommendation we could either recommend to go forward with a charter commission, or to do a special act. And if we recommended for a charter commission, that would have to be done through the residents getting 15% of the registered voters, whereas if we were to do a special act for that process, it would have to go through the council requesting that the state legislature approves, and if the state legislature approves, then it would go back to the voters to be voted on. Is that correct?
That's a good summary, Julian.
Right.
I think there's one
Thank
piece of this, though. I mean, I still come back to what the council charged the committee with, and that was to make revisions within the current form of government. So if the committee wants to make additional recommendations, to me, dictating the form of what that might take, like, you guys really can't recommend a charter commission because it has to be the voters who want that. And so, as I think the other thing to bear in mind is that, typically major changes, like changing, to a mayor form of government, come from either the elected charter commission or something like a town government study committee, whose job it is to look just at that one issue. It doesn't mean that you can't, and I know that I've seen the comments that, and you said it today, that you don't want to limit what residents can weigh in on, and I completely understand and respect that. I think in the big picture, though, whether the committee kind of invests in analyzing the actual form of government and making a recommendation on that is a little bit different than the charge that was given. Not a little bit different. It seems different to me. That being said, I also should note that, I mean, a lot of periodic charter review committees will have a list of things that they think, you know, are worthy of further exploration. And that's not unusual to just send the list. And, you know, and sometimes it's also, you know, gee, we think you should look at these bylaws because they're outdated when you look at the charter in its current form. So it's long-winded, but.
Thank you. Yes, I know other charter commissions have done, or excuse me, other charter review committees have done that sort of thing where they say, here's some other things we would advise you look into, etc.
Yep.
Bernie, and then I want to let you move on because I see you still have a fair amount of slides left.
Sure. I just want to point out that, you know, filing a petition with the legislature doesn't mean the legislature has to act on it. They can reject it outright, or what typically happens is it gets studied, and then they prorogue, and it's a dead letter, and you have to go back again. So submitting a special act to the legislature is not a guarantee of anything, for one. And for two, I keep coming back to the charge the council gave us. They're the bosses, whether we like it or not. They gave us a charge, and we really need to look at that first. There's other things we want to recommend or suggest, that's fine. When I was I was on the committee that reworked the town's bylaws and harangued Lauren endlessly with our requests for comments and like. We ended up doing what we were told to do, which is map the bylaws, the town's bylaws, to the city form, suggest where the laws needed to be updated, and then when there were holes in the bylaws, things that we found that needed to be worked on, we did that as a separate report to the council. So, I mean, that is my feeling about the form that we should take with this report as well. To critique the existing form of government. Let's suggest improvements in it, and then as an addendum, say, well, you know, this is what's come up. This might be worth looking at. We have a petition to allow non-citizens to vote. That gets us into constitutional stuff. So we may want to just say that, you know, we need to go back and look at this because the Constitution state constitution sort of caps all of this. So it's just the points I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay. So this is more about the process, and as you can see, it's a lot. Okay, pathway B, those are the minor amendments, and they can be proposed by a town council vote, or they can be submitted in accordance with the charter amendment suggestion process. They require approval by a 2/3 vote. The amendment's forwarded to the AG and EOHLC, and then it goes on the ballot 60 days after the effective date of the order. So at least 90 days, at least 90 days later, sorry. So the other thing is when we use this pathway B, we are also required to send to the registered voters, the household of every registered voter, a mailing at least 2 weeks prior to the date of the election, essentially providing a copy of the amendments or providing information about what the amendments are and where to find them. And that's not required with a special act. As I said, there's a difference between proposed and suggested. The council can propose whatever it wants. And I'll update that to put in town council. And in addition, there's the suggested option, which is requires, essentially, it gives access to the council agenda if as many people as are required to nominate a charter commissioner as a candidate sign a petition for that purpose. And then a hearing process is required. It's mostly used in municipalities with a town council. Okay. So this is more on the, okay. So that was it on the different ways. And if I can just summarize, special act, no content limitations. Chapter 43B, statutory method. There are content limitations. Only an elected charter commission under 43B can propose major amendments. and minor amendments can be approved by the council without a commission. Every charter is different, and I should have started by saying this, or at least most of them are different. There's really no charter you can take off a shelf and have it be the right charter for the town. And I think, the Charter Commission that worked on this charter really discovered that that is the case. You really need to make sure that the charter reflects the town's values. So one of the questions that I was asked was, what are the differences between a town administrator and a town manager? A town administrator is a position that is actually created by state law, Chapter 41, Section 23A. That person acts by and through the select board. And that means that they're basically administering the select board's responsibilities. Some towns adopt a bylaw where they try to kind of sketch out what that authority looks like. In comparison, a town manager is not created by the general laws. And so there isn't a law that says town managers are this. Instead, each charter identifies the duties and responsibilities of the town manager. It is the case that typically a town manager has more independent authority than a town administrator, but that depends on what the charter says. There are some town administrators that have a significant amount of authority because they were created by a charter or a special act, and some town managers that have very little authority because that's what their charter or special act provides. So what they can do is dependent on what their charter says.
Thank you.
Julian,
I had a quick question, which is actually based on something a resident had asked me. Someone came up to me in a coffee shop the other day and was like, does the charter set the town manager's salary? And I responded, currently it doesn't. Currently that's the town council's job in executive session. But what I was wondering, based on that, is they were like, can it? And I was like, I don't know. So my question to you is, can the town charter set the manager's salary if it wanted to, or is that always the town council's role?
well, I don't know of a single charter that sets the town manager's salary. So I don't know if it's possible, maybe. But as you can imagine, in order to change the salary, you'd have to amend the charter. And we just talked about how you can only amend a charter using one of these two methods, both of which are very significant. And I think kind of thinking about what goes in a charter versus what goes in bylaws, that's a really good example. You don't want to put things in the charter that could change or that are likely to change over time. And salaries are one of those things.
Absolutely.
There are the other thing is, and I've worked with a fair number of town managers, and they negotiate the terms of their employment. And I think you'd have a hard time finding a town administrator or manager who'd be willing to come in to a place where there was no opportunity to negotiate salary. So I think, there's kind of multiple reasons why it isn't done.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. That makes perfect sense to me. I just didn't feel like I had a good answer in the moment.
Yeah. Of course.
Andy? You're muted again.
Just looking at this slide, because we have a city form of government, does that mean we can't have a town administrator? We have to have a town manager, or we don't have a select board? So
right. You could call the town manager a town administrator if you have a special act that says so. Because the special act is essentially describing the powers and duties of that officer. So the position could be called anything. It could be called executive administrator. It could be called, executive officer. It could be called anything. The question about what kind of authority they have is answered directly by what's in the charter. So
Okay.
the name is a name only, and I should have pointed that out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So just some practical considerations, for the committee to think about, which I know you probably already are. And we talked a little bit, we talked about scope, we talked about the effect of the recommendations, meaning they go to the council. You obviously, the charge helped explain the role in preparing, presenting, and ultimately, I guess, defending the recommendations. And here that might mean appearing in front of the council and, talking about why you're supportive of them. And then the relationship to the legislative body and the committee's role once those recommendations are presented. So those are things to think about. These are the types of questions that charter review committees, in my experience, and charter commissions ask. What's working and what's not, reviewing the operational issues, who has what responsibility, is that the right way for it to work, proper checks and balances, supervision, adoption of policies, personnel issues, appointed and elected, and removals. Those are very hot topics always. In terms of trends, we're seeing, consolidation of financial functions, which you guys have already done, that gender neutral language, broad outline of the budget process. At some point, a lot of detail was put into a number of charters about the budget process, but it was so detailed that the towns weren't able to meet those requirements. And they turned out really to be very unflexible. And so those charter amendments essentially gave an outline of the budget process and, established some sort of baseline work to be done to set the budget calendar. So that was one. Changing positions and boards from elected to appointed. A lot of effort at reviewing what positions are elected and making sure that those positions are being, challenged, that there's challengers, that there's more than one person who wants to serve in those positions, and that a lot of appointments aren't being made to fill vacancies. Signing warrants for payment is a big deal because the way that the statute is written. Flexibility in operational structure is another area where there's been a lot of movement to allow, consolidation of functions for administrative purposes. One of the kind of newer ones is having all the land use boards be in one department. So that's something. And then professionalizing the positions of treasurer, collector, and clerk. So here's my summary. Look at that. I'm almost done. And that is the 2 ways to amend the charter. The special act provides the most flexibility in terms of the content. The statutory charter amendment requires this several steps and approval by the voters, which is often a plus, that there's approval by the voters. And then just a reminder, and I know that you guys have already figured this out, but that there's no easy answer to this, and that there's no right way of deciding these things. It's really about values and about how to put those to work. So that is it. And I can stop sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was
Yeah, thank you.
absolutely wonderful. I appreciate it. I know we did send some, I believe myself and Andy, I believe that's it, sent in emails with some questions. But if anyone has questions that they don't feel like got answered, or questions on other topics around the charter that they'd like to ask Lauren, I think now is the time. Just raise your hand, and then we can let you go. And thank you for the presentation.
Wow, I did such a great job. No one has any questions.
No, that's good, especially with this group. That's really good.
I was about to pat myself in the back.
Congratulations. Actually, that is good. Go ahead, Mike.
I had a former high school teacher the other day remarked to me that when you say, "Are there any more questions?" You have to give people at least, or students, high school students at least, 6 or 8 seconds before they answer, because everybody's
Has to
Reading.
everyone's thinking. So, and Meg has her hand up. Hooray!
Okay, go ahead.
So I think it doesn't have to be so black and white. Our committee can make a report that reflects what we've heard. We're very, very committed to listening to what people have to say. And we can report all kinds of things that we've heard, in addition to things that we might actually literally recommend.
Other questions?
Well, if I could just say one more thing, I would appreciate it. I just want to let you know that I am here. I know you're planning on working with the Collins Center or hoping to work with the Collins Center. Even with the elected charter commission, I did review the proposal and made some recommendations myself. I'm happy to assist with that. And, you know, if there's other questions that you have, please pass them on to Athena. I know, you know, my role is to be helpful to you, however that's possible.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I will comment that I like your little entering Massachusetts KP law. That's fine.
Thank you. Yeah,
Great.
someone gave me that for my birthday last year, which is very nice.
I admire it.
Thank
It's always
you.
helpful to keep in mind that if we get ourselves into a struggle, whether that be in court or somewhere else, we're going to look to Lauren to sort it out and defend us. So we want to keep that in the back of our head that you know, it's easier to ask a dumb question than it is to fix a stupid mistake, as like
Yep.
Bunkley Law used to say. So, and Lauren and her firm, NKP Laws, they represent the town in a variety of venues, and they've also done an extensive amount of work with the legislature. So if we have a special act that we want to make sure it gets viewed well and not amended somewhere, it's really helpful to have a skilled set of eyes look at it and make the revisions before it goes off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lauren. You have a great rest of your night. Thanks for joining
Okay,
us.
thank you,
after work.
everyone, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right. I will screen share the agenda right quick, but first things first is minutes. Bernie, I got your email. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm really
and-
not expecting that. I apologize to the group for just getting the
no problem.
it's in today, so we'll probably end up deferring those until everybody has a chance to read them.
Yeah, they didn't get into the packet, so I think it'd be best if we just approve the January 16th and March 13th minutes. So I make the motion to approve those two and to table the February 27th meeting minutes to next week, or excuse me, in 2 weeks, which will be along with the minutes from this meeting. Do I have a second?
Second,
Great. Meg?
Yes. Wait. Which what are we talking about? The 13th or the?
13th and the 16th. We're doing
Wait,
it.
I have a comment on the 13th.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, on both of them, neither of them indicate who signed them. Isn't it
That was
typical?
me. I did it.
So aren't you supposed to write submitted by?
I did not know that. I've never done that in.
It's typical that it's part of the transparency is that you indicate who took the minutes.
Sure. Yeah, I can
And
send.
so, you know, the old fashioned way is respectfully submitted by, or you could just say Mittens.
Sure, I'll send Athena an email and ask to put those edits.
And then on the 13th, it said that I didn't do something, and then it said we voted that we weren't going to do it. So I don't. I've got two screens here, and I don't have three
Okay.
to look. I didn't do the description because subcommittee agreed that I shouldn't do it. It
Okay.
doesn't matter. I'm just being a little picky.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
fine.
care. Nobody's going to ever read it probably.
Um,
But it says Meg Gage didn't do this. The committee voted that she shouldn't do it.
it's
And
probably
so-
because I hadn't watched the subcommittee meeting
Yeah,
before. I watched the subcommittee meeting after the meeting we had rather than before it. So I didn't know that at the time that I wrote it.
okay.
Anyway.
Doesn't matter. I'm just,
Okay. Yep. Let's
Thanks.
go on.
I
with-
approve.
Thank you. Myself, I'm an I. Bernie,
yes.
Raphael,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved unanimously with Erica absent. Thank you, everybody. Now we'll open up public comment. I see that we have 2 people in the attendees, and Anita Sorrow and Darcy Demont. And Darcy Demont has raised her hand, so you can I'll allow you to speak or press *9 if you're on a telephone, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we may engage with you as we see fit. Okay, I asked you to unmute, so you should be able to come in, Darcy.
Okay, great. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Darcy Dumont and I live in District 3. I'm commenting as a resident and former counselor on 2 potential amendments to the Charter, Article 2, regarding town council. The first suggestion is that the charter should be amended to reduce the 8-week lame duck period between Election Day and the beginning of the new term to 3 weeks. The relevant charter section is 2.1B, term of office. The background and rationale are that currently officials elected in November are seated on the first Monday in January, making an 8-week lame duck period. The lame duck period includes winter holidays when people generally are not closely observing local government. This structure results in far less public participation. In addition, lame duck periods in general provide time when departing councilors can engage in major decision-making and may be less accountable to voters. Thus, in general, the lame duck period should be limited as much as possible so that newly elected councilors can engage in the decision-making. Also, other towns with council manager governments have much shorter lame duck periods, including Franklin, Bridgewater, and Barnstable have 2 weeks, Palmer has 3 weeks, and East Longmeadow has 4 weeks. This council has had 2 lame duck periods in November, December after the 2021 and 2023 elections. During both periods, the council met very often and adopted major legislation. Democratic principles would suggest that limiting the lame duck period from 8 weeks to 3 would be much preferable. The League of Women Voters also recommended this amendment. Secondly, the charter should be amended to provide that the number of consecutive terms a councilor may serve be limited to 3 terms or 6 years. The relevant charter section is 2.1B, term of office. The rationale for term limits includes that it allows for turnover of elected officials, potentially increasing new ideas, nurturing new community leaders, and community involvement. It likely encourages more people to run for election because open seats often draw more multiple candidates. Often, incumbent seats are not contested. Our council experience has been in 2023, all incumbents but one won their council races. Residents may be discouraged from running by the incumbent name recognition advantage. Uncontested races complicate the term limits issue by giving potential unlimited terms to individuals who are seated in uncontested races. In 2021, 3 of 5 district races were uncontested. In 2023, 1 was uncontested. Limiting councilor terms would follow the model set for our resident committees, which sets length of service at 2 3-year terms or 6 years. This structure facilitates turnover and public participation. So I strongly hope that you'll consider term limits of 3 consecutive terms. I'll be sending you some written comments that go into quite a bit more detail. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Darcy. I appreciate it. I did have one quick question, which is you're speaking about term limits for counselors, not necessarily the council president or school committee and library trustees, or were you interested in those as well?
Yeah, I am interested in both, and I know the League of Women Voters of Amherst also recommended for both in their initial vote, and then they found out that the State League had a conflicting position, so that isn't included in their recommendations to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Darcy. I appreciate your comment and for clarifying that for the
All right,
committee
thanks.
to consider. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have a public comment they would like to make? Seeing none. Thank you, Darcy. We'll move to the next segment of our meeting. Meg? Yes? You're still muted.
Did we approve the minutes? I didn't notice us going around and voting.
Yes, we
Okay.
approved the minutes
Of
just a few minutes ago. Yep.
Wait, of the 16th and the 13th, but not the 27th.
Yep, we voted to table the minutes for the 27th, and that was unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about, I
One
just
member
wondered.
absent. No problem. Okay, so we will move on to our outreach subcommittee update. Erica is not here. She sent us all an email, which I won't read the entire email. But Meg, she basically said, Meg, you had an update for us and maybe some documents
Yes.
here.
Yeah, I'm going to, sorry, I'm trying to take notes. Am I muted? No.
Nope.
And,
We can come back to you too. I can move on. to
no,
the next.
I've got it here. I just was taking notes. Sorry, she sent it to me. Well, wait, there it is. All right. Oh, I got so much email. Okay. What's the next thing? Maybe she sent me something to read. Here it is. I've got it here.
Why not you read it, process it, and screen
I
share
did
it?
process it.
Okay.
It's on my, screen share it. Okay, let
Why-
me,
Why not? What if you were to upload it on your computer, read it through, and at the
okay.
next
I will
agenda-
try, I'm doing this on my iPad and taking
Right.
notes on my computer and reading her thing on my phone. So
Because the
so
next
I-
agenda item's
go
very
for
quick,
that,
so it'll
and
give you
I
some
will
time.
bring it up on my iPad if I can do that.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good old technology.
Anyway, so a budget and extension request update. So me and Andy went to town council where they put it on the consent agenda, and basically confirmed that they passed our extension request for October 31st, where we may need to make another extension request after that. I sort of personally think we will, but we may not. So basically, we have that passed in hand and all set, and they also approved an intergovernmental agreement for us to work with the Collins Center. The money for our that we requested, the $15,000 supplemental budget request, was referred unanimously to the Finance Committee on the consent agenda. They'll be taking it up at their next meeting, and then the committee will go from there, and they will either recommend it or not recommend it, and then it'll come back to council for them to finally approve by April 7th, I believe. Bernie?
Yeah, since I'm also on the finance committee, the committee is, I think, certainly in favor of the Collins Center agreement and funding it. The finance committee did not take a vote, however. What we did was defer the vote until we'll have a finance committee meeting the same time as the hearing on April 7th. The committee will vote its likely approval on the 7th, April 7th. So it seems like things are a go everywhere for that. And we just have to follow what the charter prescribes and have that yet another hearing and a final vote.
Thank you very much. And I saw the hearing got posted on the town website, so we're moving things along. We should have the money by April 7th. Thank you, Bernie. Andy, did you have a comment?
Oops. No.
Great. All right, that concludes that. If folks don't have other questions about that, Meg, back to you.
Okay, I'm just forwarding this thing to you, Julian, to put up on the screen.
Okay.
Forward. I might have made a mistake on what, never mind. So I'm just sending it to you, an email.
Okay.
Of which device to use for which thing. So I'm going to send you it. I don't think I can screen share on my iPad, or I don't know how to do that. So
I think you can, but that's okay.
well,
We don't
I
have
tried. Let me see. Share screen. Well, it's not.
Maybe I haven't made you. It may actually.
But why don't I sent you an email with the attachment, or I could
No,
read it.
I can do it.
So-
Nope, it's fine. It's just going to be easier for me to do it anyway, so I'll do it.
Did you get it yet?
Yep.
You should. Good.
I already pulled it up.
Okay. So, and I can read it. I have it right in front of me. I've looked it over.
Right.
She sent it to me shortly before the meeting.
Perfect. Can you all see that?
Amazing. Yep.
Great.
So this is the
then-
update she sent. She asked me to read it, but maybe we can just all quietly read it ourselves. Shall we just read it ourselves, Julian, or shall we?
Sure, that's
I
fine.
read it out loud. So the first one is about Samantha, Sam Giffen. But we haven't scheduled that yet because she was busy, but that's coming for her to help us with outreach.
Yep. And I'll
And,
touch
sh-
on
and,
that.
sh- and Erica met with Patricia Lloyd at the Collins Center. You can read that.
Great.
And if you scroll down, you'll see her ideas. So the questionnaire you all have asked our committee to write, and she's drafted she's made
Okay.
a questionnaire
And that
with a link.
questionnaire is meant to be sent for school committee, town council, library trustees, and
Right,
all our staff people. Is that correct?
right. Yes, and you can all, I could forward this to everyone and you can all link to it and see give comments on it for the next time. But the questionnaire, yeah, has been discussed at length about,
Okay.
so,
This concerns me to an extent that we have greatest possible flexibility in answers, not yes, no questions. And the reason I say that is because we will want, as a committee, at some point, aggregate data that we can say, folks were in favor of this, folks were not in favor of that, and that will help
Right.
in the decision-making process. So to have
Right.
a form without any aggregate data it just concerns me as to that won't be much more useful than public comment because we won't be able to as easily identify trends.
mhm. So there's tension between where we put our energy, between aggressive outreach to get input from a lot of people and how we aggregate that input once we get it. Those are both challenges that aren't the same thing.
It's just that like on at least Google Forms, if you make it a yes, no, and then have a like other column where people can submit other feedback,
Yeah,
it will aggregate that data for you and present it in a pie
Mhm.
chart, in a nice little pie chart that can just be screen shared, almost like a slideshow. So it would be much easier for this committee to get that information, technically speaking.
well, as we review that, or work on the questionnaire, Julian, you might want to come to our meetings.
I would be happy to come to the next meeting. Just invite me.
Okay,
I don't know when it is.
well, it's a week from tonight, probably. We meet on the other
Okay.
Thursday.
Excellent. Then as long as it's not during the workday, I would be happy to attend.
So then, this is work that could be done on this draft by the committee. Review the questions which are linked above and propose revisions. In the topics of interest section, review which topics are included, propose additions, and propose some brief explanatory text from the charter for each topic. And you can read this yourselves. Maybe I should send this to everyone.
No, it's really helpful.
I got it just before 6. So these are notes on the questionnaire creation from her meeting with Patricia Lloyd at Collins.
Great.
So shall I say these things or just quietly read them?
No, we can just read them, but this is helpful. Yep. Yes, excellent. Yes,
Yeah, the explainer thing is really important
I agree.
because some people don't really know, they've never read the charter.
Right.
So they need some setting, some context so they know. Otherwise, this could be like a reading something in another language.
Yep. That all?
Wait, just slow down a little. Let's read this one. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Meg.
Yep.
Questions for Meg about this report? And then we can make comments and discuss our outreach plans further in the agenda. Andy and then Bernie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really happy that they were willing to provide input even without having a contract so far, and that I think this guidance is very useful. And I think on the question of whether we want to have yes or no questions in the survey, I think I would look forward to hearing their thoughts on that as well.
Mhm.
My sense is that we're not going to get a representative sample of the population in the survey, but what we'll get is qualitative ideas. And then it'll be up to us to sort of make the judgment of what we should, take to, bring forward. But, leaving open-ended questions is I think, a way of collecting a lot of different ideas. And then we have to sort of sift through them and say which ones do we want to push forward. But I don't know that we'll have enough quantitative data to really trust that it represents the will of the town. But I think that would be something to ask the, to get more guidance from the Collins Center with.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking to myself, the League of Women Voters had like 400 or 500 responses, I feel like, to their form. That's obviously not, of a town of 16,000 people, not a representative sample size, but still a pretty sizable amount of entries, enough that you can create an aggregate data from it. Bernie?
Yeah, I'm just want to echo something that Andy said about, I'm not sure how much we're going to get in terms of aggregate data, nor should we. How much of this is going to be yes, no kinds of responses. It's difficult to talk about this without having seen the questions that are framed. So Meg is going to forward this to us. We'll have a chance to open that link up and take a look at the questions, and we can
see the
talk about that in the future.
Right.
Can I just interrupt you? Sorry. Which is the links right here. I may be able to open it and we can see the questions this meeting.
But why don't I send it to everybody so they can all?
Yeah, no, that too. I'm just saying we can get an
gonna
idea.
I'm gonna personally find it difficult to discuss the questions without having had a chance to look at them and think about them. I also wanted to make the point that back when I suggested interviewing counselors, I created a small group of 5 open-ended questions that were intended to prompt people to think about how how the charter works in certain situations. And I would like to see and hope that line of questioning for the counselors would continue, because one of the things, to go back to basics again, we're being asked to critique the operations of the charter. And so if we find that commissioners are feeling that there's insufficient flexibility in the charter to allow them to push ideas forward, introduce ideas, that becomes something we want to think about and talk about. So I'd like to see the questions, and I'd like to have a chance to read them over carefully and ask we mark those up for next week or in the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Meg, for sending that out to everyone. That'll be helpful.
I'll do it afterwards because I've got
Thanks.
3 screens going here.
Sorry, did you say my name, Julian?
Yeah, Ken, go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
Thank you, Meg. Yes, I was just going to say support in sending this document we're looking at, and we can look at the questions. I don't know if it's on a motion. I don't think I need to make, but I want to strongly politely suggest that everyone on this committee look at those questions, do their homework offline, and then would love to see this be a kind of a major part of the next meeting. That's just my vote. Again, I'm not suggesting a motion to do that.
Thank you. Raphael?
I was gonna share if it's plausible or possible for members here to review and send to the subcommittee for our next meeting. I don't know if that works for folks here, but just feedback, input for the subcommittee when we meet next week.
Thank you. Okay, I believe, does that conclude the outreach subcommittee update?
Wait,
Stop
yeah.
sharing. Thank
What,
you.
Raphael, could you say that one more time just for the minutes?
Yeah, I'm proposing if it's plausible, possible for people here to review the questions that were submitted and just provide us with some feedback. That's a subcommittee
Good.
for next week's meeting.
Got it.
For Raphael, for next week's subcommittee meeting.
Next.
Yeah.
subcommittee
Yeah.
meeting.
I'm just sorry. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get it sorted all out.
And again, the date for that subcommittee meeting is,
A week
Next.
from right now.
And Meg, could you please send me the invite for that subcommittee meeting so I can attend?
Sure.
We will.
Thank you.
I don't think I'm the inviter, but I'll do it anyway.
We can let Athena know.
I'll be the official.
Okay. Can you all see my agenda screen?
I can.
Great. Okay, so that does our outreach subcommittee update. Timeline awareness, I sort of spoke to this. I just wanted to bring this up for the committee. It looks like we'll have about one session per, like we'll have to do basically 2 articles per session at the current rate of timeline if we start working on things in June. So basically, my message is either be prepared that we may need to make another extension request or that we may need to schedule additional meetings during the time that we are actually making recommendations to the charter. That time period, which I predict will be sometime in July and August, we may need additional meetings or to extend our time. Meg.
So this outreach subcommittee is also planning these outreach meetings. The one we first proposed is 3, one in North Amherst, South Amherst, and somewhere in the middle of town that would have different topics. So we're working on that as well.
Right. So I just wanted to make the committee aware of that, given the timeline and where that sort of leads us. Other questions about that? Comments? Seeing none. I'll move on to our next steps for the outreach plan. The survey is not ready, so I was expecting the survey would be ready for this meeting. We can table that to next meeting, given that we have the town staff questionnaire, but it hasn't been sent to everyone. In fact, Erica hadn't even sent it to me, so it's just been sent to Meg. And basically, Meg will send that out next meeting. We can review it. Do you have any update, Meg, on when the survey for the public will come out, and if I can safely put that
No.
on the agenda for next meeting?
No, but it was just suggested that Raphael suggested that this be the topic of the next committee meeting.
Okay.
The subcommittee would provide. I'm not gonna. That it would be a topic of our next meeting.
What I'm asking is, do you guys expect that you'll have a survey ready to send out by the end of that meeting or not? If not, that's
Not.
fine.
We're saying you all won't have seen it yet. And it won't have come to the full committee.
No, but I'm asking, will the survey be ready to be sent to the committee by the end of your next meeting or not?
What do you think, Raphael?
Hopeful. And I
Okay.
would, let's say yes. Let's say yes.
Right.
I think we could definitely get it to this whole committee before our next meeting.
Thank you, Raphael. I appreciate that.
Well, we were hoping to get input from the Collins Center, but that's not going to happen in time.
My question is, noting that this town staff questionnaire will be sent out. Could that survey, the public survey when it's done, be sent out to the committee a few days before so that it can
Yes,
be posted in the packet? Because
Yeah.
the
yes,
staff one wasn't posted.
of course.
in the packet. Great, thank you. And then that clarifies that for public survey proposal. Next steps for outreach plan. I was wondering, the Amherst Village Festival is coming up this weekend, so I wanted to touch on that. But Andy, go ahead first.
Just in terms of the sequencing of the survey of the, officials and staff, and the survey of, I guess, the survey of officials, the survey of staff, and survey of the public. I thought we had talked about sort of sequencing those, so we would get input from the people who've been working with the process, and then with the charter or in the charter, and then we would based on what we're learning from that, we would put together something for the public that might have them reacting to some ideas, rather than just asking them to blue sky it, or that we might sync it up with the public meetings that we were planning. I think we were thinking that maybe we would launch a public survey and use those public meetings as a way of publicizing and catalyzing, galvanizing people to fill out the survey. So I don't know if I got this in my head personally or if I had heard something on that, but that we would try to get the survey for the officials first, and that we would then plan outreach meetings and public survey to sort of sync up.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, thank you. I think that makes sense. I just want our committee as a whole to be able to spend time reviewing both of these, and it doesn't mean that they can still be sent out at different times. I just want to make sure that they're ready and that we don't sort of fall behind in terms of their quote unquote due dates that Erica gave us. Other questions, comments, concerns on this? And then I'll bring up my other question. No? Okay. So not this Saturday, actually next Saturday is the Amherst Village Global Village Festival, which is a new thing the town's been doing. But we were invited to it by Samantha, and I was wondering if the outreach committee had discussed it at all, and if not, if our committee could maybe make a plan of who would like to be there, and if we could start soliciting input from the public and let the public know what we're doing at that event and how people felt about that.
Did you say the date again of that event, Julian?
It's Saturday, April 5th. Did I say February 5th? If I did, I apologize.
Yeah, I think you did. It was confusing.
April 5th is also the day of the empty bowl at the
Yes, it
Survival
is.
Center
Yes,
and
I
of the
remember that.
national mobilization, the national protest. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's a busy day. I'm also doing a bunch of other personal things that day, so it's a busy day. And it's still 2 weeks out. But what I was wondering is if we as a group or a committee would be interested in going to that and soliciting feedback, and if so, who would be willing to, not even would be willing to staff a table. I believe that Samantha is generous enough to sort of set stuff up for us on the town side. Raphael?
Say more when you propose solicit feedback.
What I would say is that would mean like having some flyers, information about what we are, what we're doing, expose people to the place on the town website as well as when our meetings are. And also if we do have a public form ready by then to sort of share that form with people. And then my last idea is, and I know I've just done this before with some nonprofit organizations I've worked with, which is to have a bulletin board with creative ideas. And I would just let members think of things that they personally might like to see in the charter, and people can put like green dots or red dots or yellow dots next to it and see where the green dots congregate, where the red dots congregate, etc. And that might just give us an idea of what people in the public are thinking when presented with certain ideas.
Yeah.
Andy? Go ahead,
I'll
Raphael.
defer to Raphael.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, in terms of timeline, and I think we could definitely be a part of that event and just let people know it exists. I think it's important to just let people know there are some mechanisms that they could use to give feedback. I think like trying to create something new, Julian, that's not flushed out by the board as a whole is tricky. Not saying it's not possible, but I think someone would have to do that work in terms of how are we soliciting feedback? It would be great for the whole committee to weigh in and then launch. So I think information sharing, here's what exists, all on board for that. But in terms of like something else, in terms of soliciting feedback in a different way, I think it's good for the whole committee to weigh in and know. Does that make sense, Julian?
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to me. Thank you. Yeah. Bernie or Andy and then Bernie. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Raphael. I mean, it's an opportunity to say, hey, we exist. You know, here's the letter that we posted on our website. Here's a link to the website where if you have ideas now, you can certainly submit comments. And, you know, we will be having public meetings and a public survey, and we look forward to getting your input when that's ready. But I think right now it's an opportunity to raise our profile, but I don't think we're ready to be soliciting input other than just letting people know that we exist, and we have a form that they can fill out now if they have ideas.
Great. Bernie.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to third on that. I long ago, far away, I was told by someone who was much wiser than I was, it is never a good idea to have a serious policy discussion at a party.
Yeah,
You know, it's a party, and it's going to be occupied by lots of people, not just Amherstinians. And that's the whole point of it, is to get everybody together. So being present, letting people who are interested know that when they leave the party, they can then take further action, which is what I think Raphael is suggesting is a good idea. Having them make decisions or solicit input, I think is not going to be that helpful.
ditto.
Ken?
First of all, I've never heard Amherstinian before. That's a good one. Well done, Bernie. I'm not sure if that's official. Is that in the charter? No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I have
It
heard
could be in the charter.
there. This is, sorry to off track us, but it is funny. Does anybody call it U Drive rather than University Drive?
I never heard that.
There was a memo to the town council where it was referred to as U Drive, as opposed to University Drive. I just found that sort of funny that I saw it in a memo. Anyway, go on, Ken. Sorry.
Yeah, so my official comment was, yes, don't solicit it. However, you will get those. You will get unsolicited feedback, and I guess it's really the time whoever staffs that is to say, thank you for sharing it. Here's our card, here's our whatever, our handout. Please do it officially on the website. So you'll still get into those conversations. So I think it would be best to have a couple people there at the very least, because one will possibly be tied up in a conversation. Not a conversation, a monologue, because we're not going to discuss. We're just going to listen.
Thank you. That's a well-worded comment, I must say. All right. Looking for other questions, comments on, is there times that work for people? That we could be there? Does morning work better than afternoon? Afternoon work better than morning, etc.?
How long is it for? I
believe
didn't
it's
think you gave a
pretty much
time frame.
Most of the day event.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be in Boston.
Okay.
And it's on the common.
Yeah, I believe so. Yep. Yeah, it's from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
On the common, unless it's raining, then it'll be at the middle school.
Ugh.
Raphael,
Do we want as many people here involved or just a small
you
group?
can't have a quorum, so not just volunteers up to
We
5.
could stagger it though, Julian.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so it's just an ask.
It-
I
It's a social gathering. I mean, I wouldn't worry about a quorum if we have, the idea that we'd have more than, I think 3 people there at any given time is probably a stretch to begin with, but we're not going to be there deliberating. We're going to be there.
Right.
We're going to be there listening and handing out flyers or whatever.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about the open meeting law in that case.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna say because I'm a part of outreach subcommittee and we are planning the first listening session, I think I'll pass on this.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks.
Other members who would like to attend?
I can certainly help. Yeah.
I can attend in the morning, but not the afternoon.
I'm trying to figure out what my kids are doing. But I'll get back to you. Possibly in the afternoon would be better.
Oh, great. Would the outreach subcommittee be willing to like send out sort of a doodle poll or a when to meet for members to get everybody scheduled for that? Is that possible?
I don't know how many things we can take on. There's just 3 of us. I'd say no, because we've got our hands full with the questionnaire and we're trying to schedule these 3 public
Okay.
events.
It's understandable.
Does that make sense, Raphael? Not to take on anything else.
No, we're good. We're good. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there another member? If not, I will, but if someone else would be interested.
Well, we could ask right now if anybody who can look at their calendar can get back to
Yeah.
you, Julian.
Marcus, you said possibly afternoon.
Yeah. Let me.
Anyone
I'm
else?
checking.
Andy, go ahead.
I'm just, how are we gonna produce the material that would be handed out or the information?
Good
I
question.
believe a fair amount of it can be done basically just by printing out what's on the town website and putting it into pamphlets. And if someone wants to do that, or I'm happy to go to the library and print it. Other volunteers? Folks want to check their calendars.
Yeah, I can't that day. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Future agenda planning? Any topics? Yes.
I think we have we're hoping to have the survey for next time, right?
Yeah.
The officials survey. So
That'll take up
I
a
think
fair
that would be a big piece of it.
I saw somebody else raise their hand and then it went away. Ken?
No, it was, sorry, I was just gonna say what Andy said.
Right, perfect.
But
I'll
I've got to raise my hand here.
Meg, go right ahead.
Our outreach subcommittee might have a proposal for the 3 outreach events that we're planning.
Great. Awesome. That's helpful. And then did everyone get a chance to, this was in my not anticipated section, did everyone get a chance to review? We got nearly 100 pages of public comment that Athena sent.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
Is
most
everyone-
of those pages though were Kevin Collins
Yeah.
giving us his AI generated minutes.
Bad.
Yeah.
But there was
Which,
some other stuff in there. There
I
was
mean,
some-
I have to say, I thought I did a better job than he did with my AI generated ones, but you know.
Well, Well, shall we put that on the agenda? Discussion of the input?
Yeah,
I
let's
think that would
do
be a
it.
good idea.
I think
Yeah,
that'd be
let's
a
do
great
that.
idea.
Yeah.
And basically, to be brief about it, yes, a lot of it is that, but if you take that out, if you take out Google's opinions, we can find some stuff. I know there's some stuff from Maura Keene. I know there's something from actually an old teacher of mine. There's other stuff in there that it might be valuable that we look at. So if everyone, I'll include it in the packet, but if everyone could review it and maybe we have a discussion of it at our next meeting, that would be great.
Do we have a link to that, or is that?
Tina sent it out to everybody.
Yeah, the other week.
Okay.
Yeah, I did see your email in there, so it was just in your email about a week ago.
Hey,
10 days ago.
Okay, great. Thank you. So just to recap before we leave, Meg, the outreach committee is going to come to our next meeting with dates for outreach events, who should attend, that sort of thing. And then you guys are also, Erica is going to come to us with the survey questions for the public survey, and we will already have the town staff an official survey for our next meeting. Does that make sense? Great. Raphael?
Where do we end up with like the plan for the event in 2 weeks? Like who will be in attendance?
Yeah.
What's the plan?
I'm not sure. That's what we are trying to work out.
so far it's just Julian and Marcus.
Yes. So if other people can attend, that would
Good
make
question,
it better.
Raphael.
But
Especially
beyond
because I certainly won't be there all day.
beyond attendance, I didn't get clarity. We got an invite next time. Will you all be with someone else? Like what are you
We
thinking?
will be at the festival, or hopefully at the festival, and we will be sort of bringing some of our own materials, but we'll be at the Town of Amherst table. And I believe Samantha invited us and informed us of the event when she was here last week, or
Okay.
2 weeks ago.
And do you all think it's an overreach to just have some materials left there and an ask for them to just share maybe a flyer that shares information about the where folks can go to share?
Yeah,
I think it would be great to have a face for people to talk to.
We don't have folks who are going to be there continuously. So
Right.
when folks
So
from the
when folks aren't there, yes, but like if we can staff a majority of the time, even if it's not all of the time,
Yeah.
it would be great if there was a face that people could talk to, get questions answered, that sort of thing. I'll be honest, when I approach people and I'm like, hey, I'm on the Charter Review Commission, they don't have as much feedback for me as they have questions. People don't always know everything, so it would be great if we had someone there to answer questions.
Yeah, I'm saying, Julian, you made a call, appeal, folks are not available. So
Yeah.
if you have two and we move to just having that material available for folks, that's the plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's most appropriate. So yeah, other
Great.
than that, do we have anything else? Not seen anything. Anybody have unanticipated agenda items? No? Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great.
second.
Motion, I saw Raphael first, Meg. Motion to adjourn made by Marcus, seconded by Raphael. I'm an aye. Raphael?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Bernie?
Yes.
Ken?
Aye.
Thank you so much. We are adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night, folks.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night.